Welcome to the Growing Towards God podcast. Here on Growing Towards God, we talk about ways to grow spiritually and hear how God has been working in people's lives. My name is Virginia, and I am so excited that you are here today. Thank you for listening, so now let's get to the good stuff. Welcome to the first episode of Growing Towards God. I'm super excited to be doing this, and so I just wanted to dedicate this episode to introducing myself and talk about what this podcast is going to look like. One of my favorite get-to-know-you games is Two Truths and a Lie, and so I have come up with some statements, and you have to guess what the lie is. Okay, so the first one is, my favorite color is pink. The second one is, I grew up in a congregational church. And the third one is, I can play the electric guitar. Alright, so now that you've had time to think about it, I will tell you which one is the lie. If you guessed number 2, you were correct. The statement was, I grew up in a congregational church, and so I actually grew up in a Lutheran church. So I just wanted to share a little bit more about my spiritual journey and have been growing recently before I talk about my hopes for this podcast. So yeah, I grew up in a Christian home in a Lutheran church, and we went to church every Sunday, and I was very involved in the youth group through middle school and high school, and it was fun, and I love the Lord, but not with my entire life, and I had a lot of self-confidence struggles and trouble trusting God and giving up control. And then I came to college, and I joined a Christian community at school that I go to, and it's called Cru, Campus Crusade for Christ, and I just developed so much because of being surrounded by people who chose to show up every week and chose to go to the events and do Bible studies and wanted to be in intentional Christian community, and it wasn't like their parents were forcing them to go. And so through that, God gave me really close friends, and during freshman year, I still struggled with balancing college life, and it is super hard living in a world where your belief system is attacked and challenged every day. And so I had a really hard time with completely and unashamedly living for God and just denying what the world presents as acceptable for college students and what God says isn't okay, but the world says is totally fine. Yeah, that I've kind of struggled with, and then I went to Ireland this past January for a semester abroad, and it was so restful and peaceful that I really got to develop a stronger sense of self and sense of who God made me to be. And Ireland is just so beautiful if you've never been there before, but it was so amazing to be in another part of the world and just to live. I took easy classes and didn't have a lot of schoolwork because their school system is kind of different, and so I was able to prioritize rest and do things that I've always wanted to do and create new habits and just spend more time with God and appreciate all that He has brought me through in my life, and not even just what He has done for me, but His character and who He is as a loving God and loving Creator. And so I was really removed, obviously from where I was at school and the friend groups that I was in, and so it was so refreshing, and I just feel like I grew a lot in Ireland. And then this summer, I went on a mission to Romania with one of my best friends from college and the church that we go to when we're at school. And I have been on a lot of mission trips with the youth group in high school before, and so when this opportunity was presented, before I even went to Ireland, I was definitely interested in going. And so I decided to go on this trip midway through my semester abroad, and that was something that I had to trust God with to be able to financially provide for this trip and raise the funds. And so, long story short, I end up going in July to Romania, and I helped run a vacation Bible school camp for the Romanian children in this village, poor village, and I think that trip was probably the most impactful mission trip that I've ever been on, because it was so exhausting, but even through that exhaustion, I just felt so close to God, and He really sustained me every day and gave me the energy to run around with the kids and get to know them as much as I could. And I didn't know Romanian, so we had to work with the translators, and there was this aspect of feeling a little helpless in situations where we just had to let go and say, like, God, show us what you want us to do and lead us where you want us to go. We're open to being used by you, and just step back and watch him present opportunities that we could step into. And so for the first time in my life, I really experienced the joy of the Lord serving him. And that was just so transformative. Like, nothing else was really on my mind during the week that I was there. Like, I turned off my social media notifications, and I was just fully present and, like, open to being used by God. And he did use me to share the gospel with these children and show them how loved and cared for they are. And so through all of these experiences, I've just learned to trust God and place my hope in Jesus, that he came and died for me so that I don't have to earn my salvation, but because of his amazing grace, I'm not a slave to sin, and I don't have to be worried about anything. I can just trust God, and when situations do arrive, like, he will provide, and he's gonna make a way through it or around it. And I've just experienced so much freedom in serving him, and he's called me out, and now I want to be more like Jesus every day. And so the idea for this podcast kind of came about when I was deciding what I really wanted to be involved in again when I came back from being abroad, and we'll be starting a new semester. And I was interviewing for this other club position to do their podcast, and I just kind of realized that I didn't actually feel passionate about it, and I wouldn't enjoy doing it. So I was like, okay, why don't I do something else? Like, I could do another club podcast. And I was like, well, I wouldn't ever do, like, my own podcast. And this, like, question popped into the back of my mind, like, well, why couldn't you? And I just, like, started praying about it and told my friends in Ireland, and I really just felt like it was from God. Like, I had doubts. I was like, why would I start my own podcast? Like, that's so hard. All of this, but God has really empowered me with, like, ideas and to make it happen. And so I feel like the way that it has, like, popped up in my life consistently since having that question pop into my head is also, like, from God. And so I don't know how he wants to use this podcast, but I'm doing it, and I'm open to the ways that it's gonna help people. And, you know, even if it only helps one person, then it's worth it. Yeah, I just thought it would be interesting to talk about ways that I've grown in my Christian journey with the Lord, and especially as, like, a young person, and to also hear from other people in my life. I just wanted to say that what Jesus has for you is better than anything you could imagine for your life. And I hope that from listening to this podcast, you're inspired to make changes in your life and grow in your relationship with God, your creator. And he just loves you so much, and you can have such a deep friendship with God if you put the work in and commit to knowing him. You will find that your life will just be so much more rich and fulfilling, and it'll be so beautiful to see what the Lord does for you. I also love reading the Psalms, and so I'm going to do some episodes where I just read a psalm and ask some questions, and kind of you can meditate on the word. And so this is going to be a lot of fun, and I'm really excited to get this going and see how the Lord uses it. And so I'm looking forward to how I'll grow through this, and encouraging you listeners to be bold and empowered in your faith to live a life that is pleasing to God. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. I hope you took something meaningful away from this discussion, and know that God loves you so much and desires a personal relationship with you. If you'd like to stay up to date with episodes, follow me on Instagram at Growing Towards God Pod, and subscribe on whatever platform you're listening on. Before I go, I'd like you to take this benediction into your life and let the Lord's goodness empower you today. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. Have a great rest of your day, and catch you next time on the Growing Towards God podcast.